Hey guys, welcome to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about some issues that international nurses face: scamming, debt bondage, migrating and realizing that there is no job available, confiscation of travel documents, discrimination, poor working conditions. These are all issues that some international nurses face right across the world. In today's video, we are going to do a full analysis and step by step process how you, as an international nurse, can safeguard yourself against unethical recruitment. In today's video, we have a special guest with us. Super excited to have her here with us. And I also did a little introduction, even though she's going to introduce herself. So she's an advocate, I call her, for international and foreign trained nurses and local nurses right across the world. She calls herself Kay, the contract nurse hacker. Welcome, Kay. So happy to have you. I'll let you do your full introduction.
Oh, thank you very much, Ava. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in this a good discussion. A little bit critical and
Yeah.
sensitive, but we really need to talk about it. And thankful for Ava for having this opportunity to discuss these issues with you
Mhm.
guys.
Yes.
So, my name is Kay. I've history wise, I've been in the United States since 2006. I came as an international recruit for a direct hire company in New York in the US. After that, I became a travel nurse for the past 16 years now, and that was just my life. Seeing working with different companies, going in one hospital after another, gaining as much experience as I can. Initially, because I want to be a professor one day, and I think learning the different settings of the the healthcare landscape will give me that sense of understanding as an international nurse who's very new to the US healthcare system. By accident, during pandemic, I started mentoring a lot of our local nurses so they will be empowered on how to get to the New York and respond to the pandemic and not worry about not worry about their family that will be left behind, and making sure that they are well educated what to do as a travel nurse responding to crisis, what should they be preparing. So I was advocating for our
Mhm.
COVID crisis nurses. Eventually, after that, a year after, I think a lot of our international nurses have picked up my education ways and have reached out to me. Hey, Kay, we have issues going on, and you might be the person who knows how to go around it. And I said, as a nurse, I said, bring it on. What's the problem? I love problem solving, right, Ava? That's our
Yeah.
thing. Nurses are
Yeah.
problem solvers by inherent. So I look at the issue, and these nurses were actually sued for $100,000
Mm.
breach of contract on top of an immigration fraud lawsuit, and also unjust settlement. I mean, unjust enrichment. And I
Oh.
told them, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a nurse. But
Yeah.
this doesn't sound right to me at all. And I told them, I don't know the answer for you, but I will try to find the answer for you. As travelers, we got used to like find your own way around.
Yeah.
That's how we are. We get thrown in the field, and we just have to make sure that we know. It's not a matter of you knowing everything, really, but you knowing where the answers will be
Yeah.
and finding. So I think I got that skill for being a resourceful in comes to finding those key people to help. And then I brought this case to a couple of lawyers who've identified this might be a case of human trafficking. And I'm like, what? Oh, I mean, what? I've never heard of that such thing. I know it was wrong. I know there's something off. Um, and it was tagged as human trafficking, possibly case, a possible case. So after that, I started reading and reading and reading. I was working in a prestigious hospital in here in Maryland, and I quit my job just to give time and advocate and learn this whole thing. So
Wow.
that's when I started. I said, really, this is a big problem.
Yeah.
I I said, I think I'm kind of familiar with what's happening here because when I arrived in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
In 2006, I arrived here with the promises that is different from what was actual reality. And then I'm seeing myself, actually I'm a victim of this too.
Mm.
I didn't know that I was a victim of that back in 2006. I thought I was just a lucky girl. Because I kind of realized, like, wait a minute, my friend said that this happened to her too
Right.
back in 2007. Wait, somebody said that I met in an ICN meeting. She's in leadership right now. And she
Mm-hmm.
said, that's the same thing that happened to me 5 years ago. I'm from Nigeria. And then I spoke to somebody from Puerto Rico. That's the same thing happened to me 10 years ago. And I'm like, why is there nobody talking about this?
Right.
And then I realized that this is a topic that's shoved under the rug, I think, for many years, and nobody dared to really talk about it. Not primarily because maybe they don't want to talk about it, um, because of, number one, the connections that they build, the relationship they build already. Number two is they don't know the topic that much, and it's better for them to step back on those
Right.
issues. It's not for them to discuss. So I think this is where I started, like, really digging into that, and now becoming the accidental international nurse lifeguard. And
Yeah.
that's where you see my LinkedIn page. It says accidental for a nurse lifeguard, because I never was in this position. I never thought of this position. All I want was, hey, I'm going to be a travel nurse. I'm going to be putting myself in a financial situation ahead that I can just, do something that I love doing later on in my life,
Mm-hmm.
and really just love advocating and helping people. I'm really very active in medical missions before. When I was in the Philippines, I'm very active in, like, social events. Um, I'm your party animal. So, like those things. I'm not a person who will go for so many certifications related to nursing. I like
Mm-hmm.
taking certification that I enjoy doing, like certification for bartending,
Wow.
for your for your I went to barista school, for coffee barista. The next one is actually winemaking. So that's one. So, just kind of love what I'm doing, enjoying life, because for me, um, life is too short not to enjoy it.
True.
But then I cannot enjoy it when I see people drowning in front of me.
Right.
So it's not for me. So I think there's a calling there that I think I needed to do something about it.
Yes. And it's literally a calling because it found you. And I don't think it was an accident. I don't think it was an accident. You have a purpose and it takes special persons, to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you're literally an advocate in your own right. And I strongly believe that you're helping thousands of persons. Just like you said, you kept asking everybody, I was a victim too. I didn't know that I experienced this too, but
Yeah.
persons weren't just talking, but persons like you are who we need in our spaces to be the voice for the voiceless. So,
Yeah.
and we thank you for that introduction so well. And I love the fact that you talk about being a mixologist, doing bartending, and those are the things I advocate for too, like stepping out of your comfort zone and doing the things that you like. You're very marketable right now.
And actually, you'll be surprised. One employer, when I applied as traveling nurse, they saw it in my resume. I just added it for fun,
Mhm.
and she said, "You know why I pick you? I mean, aside from your resume, we have a summer party coming up, and you're very welcome to attend."
Wow.
So she really told me that. The hiring manager told me that. I was laughing at it because I never realized that people actually look onto that. But actually, they said, "Yeah, we look on those your soft skills too." You
Yes,
know,
very important.
so they love that idea of
Mhm.
using the hard skills and soft skills when they're hiring these people.
Mhm.
So it was a great experience for me. So I love to teach. I
Mhm.
went for my master's in education school, but I'm one of those who chicken out on the middle of it.
Mhm.
Not because it was hard. I think because I have different priorities back then. My
Yeah.
family first is more important, to survive financially.
Yeah.
So I set aside my goal, and didn't realize that whatever I did for the past 18 years was really preparing me to be in this role, to
Right.
teach, to educate. to see the different healthcare system, and eventually discuss this topic that we're gonna go talk about now.
Yes. Yes, so true. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about some, I call it like some negative factors are the dark side of international nurse recruitment that a lot of persons don't talk about, and a lot of persons like suffer in silence. What we call
Mhm.
unethical recruitment practices. So earlier we were talking about the steps, and we're going to do a breakdown with it. We talk about starting from recruitment, immigration, arrival, and employment. There are different issues that the nurses will face, such as when they migrate, no job, when they migrate to the
Mhm.
country, debt bondage, discrimination, poor workplace, threats if they decide to leave a contract. So, being that advocate and that person who is doing research and education in this area, I want you to give us a breakdown of the entire process and some issues that you see that international nurse face.
Yes. So the way I would analyze this for people to understand what are the different things is analyzing it the journey. A person will come in first through a recruiter,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the first process is recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second is, like you said, the immigration process. After they sign a contract, it's now the nurses now are legally bound to follow whatever is in the contract. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
thing called immigration process that nobody know how to go around except the immigration lawyers. And then after the visa is issued, now there is a called arrival or transition to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And after arrival, now the time has come for the nurses to start their job. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so those four has so many issues involved. In each of this process the nurse has to get through. If they
Right.
land a very good agency and recruiter and employer,
Mm-hmm.
they will have no issue about this. But it's a cocktail. To find a very good experience, you need to have a good recruiter, transparent recruiter. You have to have a good recruitment
Maybe.
agency will be
Mm-hmm.
here. And the third is you have to have good employer. And what are the
Mm-hmm.
chances that you're going to have good in that three different aspects? Well, it's like, you have to align the holes of the Swiss cheese,
Yeah.
right? Either you align all the Swiss cheese holes for a bad employment or for bad experience, or you align all those Swiss cheese holes for a good employer. In my experience, coming to the United States, I got an experience that are quite bad in almost all of it.
Wow.
Yeah, but majority of our nurses, they will just even have just issues with recruitment, immigration processing, or arrival and employment. But
Mm-hmm.
in my experience, I got both. I got the double whammy. I call it
Wow.
double whammy because we'll start with the recruitment. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
recruiters out there are from outside the country that are being hired. And most of these people, they're not familiar with the laws of recruitment and marketing in the US. In where I come from, Philippines, and I'm pretty sure this is true to other developing countries too. There's no federal trade commission. So if I'm a
Mm-hmm.
recruiter that says to you, "Oh, you're gonna get a bonus," and in reality, there's none. I- as a recruiter from the Philippines, I might nobody's gonna sue me for marketing fraud, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because before you sue somebody there, you need to be having so much money, and if you sue, what money will you win? All right.
Right.
So that's a question there. Is there accountability when it comes to recruiters who's saying incorrect marketing material and or sharing incorrect information? The answer is there's no accountability. So if there's no accountability, then there's a lot of fraud that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have like information like saying you're going to be working in this location, but then when you arrive it's not really there. And there's a lot of recruiters saying, we supply nurses everywhere in the United States, just tell us where you want to go
Well,
and we'll take you there. Right? And the nurse, oh wow, I'm going to sign up for this because I like to be in New York, only to
mm-hmm.
find out when they get here, we don't have a New York client right now, so we'll send you to Iowa. But the nurse said, well, you told me I'm going to New York because my family's there. That's why I
Mm-hmm.
chose you. But then they look at back to the contract, it's saying, no, your contract says you can be sent anywhere. And it's so funny how many recruitment companies will say, "Oh, we supply nurses all over the US. Just tell us where you go. We supply all the states." But the question
Mhm.
is, are you really, or are you selling? Are you planning to sell this nurse to another company eventually after they arrive here? Because it's like a reselling material now, right? So, which is very unethical. You don't
Yeah.
resell nurses just like that, okay? Unless the nurse wants to, sure. But if the nurse has no idea about that, then that's where probably reselling these nurses, there's a thin line between smuggling and this process. Okay.
Mhm.
There's also a thing saying recruitment will say it will give you the most competitive salary. And this is very high. And then when you look at the contract, it doesn't say the amount of money in there. It will
No.
just say prevailing wage. And the nurse
Right.
would be like, what is prevailing wage, right? So me and you, that's not a normal word. That's a legal jargon of
Mm-mm.
immigration. What does prevailing wage means? Oh, and they said that's the great money. Don't worry about it. You'll be in America. And now the nurses would come here realizing when they get here that that salary was $29 an hour. And now you brought your family with you, three dependents.
Mhm.
And they said, you told me that my salary will be based from prevailing wage in New York. Why am or my prevailing wage in New York, but where am I? Why am I here in Louisiana? Now by immigration, you have to follow that salary where you are working
Yes.
when you arrive, right? So there's a lot of most false information. Another one there is this is an upcoming trend right now, Ava,
Mhm.
is home care nursing.
Oh, yes. I realize that is on the rise.
Yeah, right. So the huge amount of demand for home care was
Mhm.
there because of the pandemic. So I have heard a lot of nurses come to me and say, "Kay, um, I'm applying for this home care job, and they told me that this is the only county that I will work." And I look at it. Oh yeah, that's fine. That's about 20-30 minutes drive.
Mhm.
Okay, if that is the only county that you're going to be working. So the marketing was there, correct? And I said, yeah,
Mhm.
that I think that's fine. That's reasonable. But then after they sign, the contract says you can be anywhere in the state. And they tell you including New York. I'm like, New York State is 6 hours from each
Yeah.
other. It can be 7 hours away.
Mhm.
Um do you know how to drive? So then I learned that these nurses don't drive. They have never had driven before. And the reason why they got that apartment that is close
Mhm.
to that zip code or the county where they should be, because they can use like Uber or public transportation because they don't drive. But now you're
Yeah.
sending them 2 hours away. That's not legal. That's not ethical
Mm-mm.
either.
No.
So there's a lot of that's happening in the marketing, fraud
Mhm.
marketing, job scams, which are usually covered by a federal trade commission if you do it here. But then you
Mhm.
do it outside the US, then you're not covered, right?
Mm-mm.
So a lot of our nurses are praying to that. So it is something that we need to address and educate our nurses, knowing the red flags of it. Um, Another problematic is also the recruitment fees.
Mhm.
By immigration, when an employer will need to hire a an international nurse to, if they need to sponsor, that employer will need to submit a thing called certificate of labor.
Mhm.
They need to go for an application for that. It's called permanent labor application. There's a fee that's included to that. And a lot of these recruitment companies are asking money from the nurses to shoulder that
Mhm.
before it's actually applied.
Oh.
So now these nurses would give money, and then later on, the Department of Labor will say, "Oh, we declined it. So didn't get approved for that." So what will happen to the nurse now? Well, she's out already by $2,000 or
Mhm.
2,500. So a lot of these recruitment companies are asking money up front. Where in reality, by
L-
by law,
Oh, right.
it should be the employer who have paid that,
Yes.
and they should, they cannot offer a job outside United States without perm labor yet. They cannot.
Mm-hmm.
It's like saying to me, Ava, you're the hiring manager of a unit. You need a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't post that in Indeed right away, right?
No.
You you need to get a permission from the HR, right? So when HR approves, that's the only time you can actually start, start accepting applications for that
Right.
job. However, yes, you can tell someone, hey, if you have friends coming in, um, I have an opening coming up for, in 2 months. If they want to line up, just prepare your documents. You can tell the people to prepare, but you cannot get a job interview until that HR approves it. So in a bigger scale of immigration, that perm labor certificate approval is needed before you can actually hire
Mm-hmm.
or hire people from outside the United States. So a lot of this recruiter is passing that burden to the nurses, but then the nurses didn't realize that's actually illegal.
Yeah.
So recruitment fees, I've seen some company who said if you just sign this document, you don't know yet. It's a staffing company. It's like signing up, but there's no employer yet. But then after you sign, you and you change your mind because they're taking 1 year to find an employer for you. You have to pay them $5,000. I mean, it's like, okay, I'm paying you to be a slacker, kind of like that.
And those are immediate red flags.
All right.
Yeah.
So I'm giving you $5,000, but you promised me you're gonna find me a job. But since you didn't find me a job, I cannot get that money back anymore. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
what's the incentive for you to look for a job? You already got your money, right?
Right.
So there is like those kind of pre-filing breach fee
Mm-hmm.
that nurses are being signed to. And there's also a thing called recruitment fee that's being collected. And I've
Mm-hmm.
heard some nurses paid for this recruitment fees that they said, hey, okay, I'm out already 7,000 because I have to pay for my dependents too.
Mm-hmm.
And I've applied 2019 and I told them it's already 2023. That's 4 years. I'm
For
like,
years.
what happened? And said, we've been trying to call the recruiter, but the recruiter said, oh, we still keep on looking for jobs for you. I said, that's not right.
No.
And and then when the nurses arrive here, not that specific nurse, the other nurse who applied in 2021, they're here
Mm-hmm.
already 22.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to the other nurse that was previous to that? So what happened is they never got applied.
No.
So the recruiter kind of like pocketed, and also realizing after arrival, some nurses said, okay, the hospital told us that they paid for all our recruitment. And I said, well, did you tell them that you paid for it? Yes, I told them too. I told the HR that the recruiter made us pay for everything. And I said, so technically the recruiter pocketed from the hospital and pocketed from you.
Have you? Mm-hmm.
No wonder the recruiter is giving you a buffet when you come here, when you arrive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even a Brazilian rodizio for steaks. They even
Mm-hmm.
take to Chinese buffet. I mean, that's good. But if I was a recruiter who's actually pocketing thousands of dollars, might as well give something back nicely, right? Right? So it's just so funny because majority of us would come here and very thankful, but not realizing that we're being stolen thousands of dollars because of
Mm-hmm.
our ignorance.
Yeah.
Um, the other portion to that, Ava, is when nurses are given dual contracts. Have you heard about it? Like dual contracts?
No. Dual contract. I never heard of it.
So actually, the first time I saw this one was from a contract for a doctor
Mm-hmm.
here in the United States. So a doctor is being hired by a healthcare system, but then the healthcare system also works with specific, let's say, specialist who runs the program. And then that doctor, the director, will also have a contract. or the group of practice will also have a contract for that new doctor. So I said, do so technically you're signing two contracts. And I said,
Right.
yeah. So if you don't like the hospital, then you still have the contract with the doctor. So
Hmm.
what are you gonna do? I mean, where are you gonna work? That can then if you're being terminated by the hospital, then you have to pay the doctor too. That doesn't sound right to me. Right? So it's a dual contract. It means that it's like kind of like putting a layer that when you leave, you're
Hmm.
still attached to something that you didn't realize.
Yeah,
So a
that's
lot,
what I'm thinking.
yeah. So it's kind of like a scammy in my opinion, and I think
Yeah.
I think contract should never be valid at all. Um, so there are companies who will say we're a recruitment company. We're the
Hmm.
one who's helping you get to the United States. But
Hmm.
then when you get to the US, it's really the employer who will be your sponsor, like the
Yeah.
employer itself.
Hmm.
In the perfect world, the recruiter should have I mean the nurse should have no more obligation after arriving in the United States with the
No.
recruiter. So you have a recruiter contract and you have an employer contract. An recruiter should only just job is to bring you here. But
Hmm.
once you started your job or arrive in the United States and have completed all those pre-employment things, then your recruiter responsibility should drop.
Yeah.
And then now the only valid contract you have is your hospital. But what happens with these companies is they're slipping a secondary contract, and the nurses and the hospital would say, yes, you can leave or you can change to a different hospital within our system. Okay, even though your contract says you're just here, let's say in Atlanta.
Hmm.
Okay, but you can go since our sister company is in Florida. You can move to Florida without breaching your contract. And then the recruiter will realize that and learn about it, and then they will say, you can't do that, you owe me money for doing that, for a transfer. Well, the hospital said, I'm not breaching the contract. But then the
Hmm.
recruiter is saying, no, you owe us money because you're breaching your contract. And I'm like, no. The
No.
employer already said no. And so
Yes.
now they're threatening these nurses of lawsuit for breach of contract, which is very unethical and very malicious. I think they shouldn't owe that, in my opinion. But those are the things that happen during recruitment.
Hmm.
And now, when it comes to immigration process, this is a little more technical and complicated because the nurses and the recruiter really are not immigration experts.
No.
So now you're in the hands of the middleman called immigration lawyers
Yes.
and
Yeah.
whoever's applying for that ETA 9089 application. So there's a form, Ava. It's
Hmm.
called ETA Edward Tango Alpha
Hmm.
9089. ETA 9089.
Hmm.
This is a specific form of an immigration document. It's a federal form, federal government form that it's very long, and I think it's like 7 8 pages. Before it was longer, but now they kind of like trim it down. That it will tell exactly, number one, who is the employer, who's the
Hmm.
sponsor, who's the recruitment agency, who is the immigration lawyer processing this document, who is the what's the nurse's name or who is being sponsored. So it's like a whole intake of history technically
Hmm.
that the immigration of the United States need to see. But this is not visible to the nurse.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Can the nurse access this?
No, majority of it should be. There's a thing called freedom of information.
Hmm.
The nurses should have the right to see this, but majority of the time, the recruitment company or the agency will say this is our confidential document because it has employer vital information and you cannot see this one. But actually, the government is saying yes, they can.
Hmm.
It's the right of these nurses or sponsored to know on whatever is written here, right? Because they're the one who's signing the document at the end.
Yes.
It will tell their the salary. It will tell how much they should be earning in a year or per hour, and where's the work location.
Mm.
And this is not visible to the nurses in most of the time. And the nurses will only be given like the page where they will sign. They will not
Right.
see the other pages. So there's no transparency. An example for that is, let's say a nurse, international nurse, will have experience in let's say